Your custom system is obsolete. My name is Isaac Flores. I am 46 years old, and I have spent the last 8 years building something that worked. The new chief technology officer at Kelmore Legal stood in my office doorway, tablet in hand, delivering his verdict on the software system that had quietly saved our firm millions in billable hour tracking and compliance reporting. The future is cloud-based solutions, he continued, not bothering to sit down. We are moving to Verdant Legal Pro, industry standard, proven track record. Your creation use will be phased out by the end of the quarter. I saved my work and looked up at him. Verdant Legal Pro. That is correct. They handle all the major firms in Denver. Boeing, Lockheed, the federal contractors. We will be in good company. The irony was not lost on me. For 8 years, I had watched attorneys panic when other firms' systems crashed during critical depositions or regulatory filings. Now we were joining that crowd. My system had never failed, not once. During the Morrison class action, when we had to track 200,000 billable hours across 47 attorneys in real time, my software handled it without a hiccup. During the federal investigation of Aerospace Dynamics last year, when the government demanded minute-by-minute billing records going back 3 years, my system generated the reports in under 10 minutes. When do you need me to start the transition? I asked. We will not be needing a transition. Verdant Legal has their own implementation team. Your services will no longer be required after Friday. I nodded. Understood. He turned to leave, then paused. Nothing personal, Isaac. This is just business evolution. You understand? Of course. After he left, I sat in the quiet of my office. Through the window, downtown Denver stretched out below, all glass and steel reaching toward the mountains. I had built something here, something that worked, something that mattered. But I was not bitter. In this business, you learn that everything is temporary. Projects end, systems get replaced, people move on. But I also knew something else. I knew how these cloud vendors operated. I knew their limitations, their failure points, their support structures. I had seen the aftermath when firms switched to industry standard solutions. The emergency calls at midnight, the lost data, the scrambling to recreate billing records for regulatory deadlines. I opened my desk drawer and pulled out the business cards I had printed 2 years ago but never used. Isaac Flores, independent software consultant. Clean, simple, professional. I had always planned to go independent eventually. Perhaps the timing was not entirely my choice, but the destination remained the same. I came to Kelmore Legal 8 years ago after the dot-com crash claimed my startup. My partner and I had built inventory management software for small manufacturers. But when the funding dried up, I needed steady work. Law firms were stable, conservative. They paid well and demanded results. My first week at Kelmore, I watched 3 attorneys lose an entire day of billable work when their legacy system corrupted a case file. The managing partner, Virginia Kelmore herself, asked if I could build something better. Something that will not fail when we need it most, she said. I spent 6 months studying how attorneys actually worked. Not how they said they worked, but how they really operated under pressure. Late nights, impossible deadlines, constantly shifting priorities. I built the system around those realities. Redundant backups, offline capability, intuitive interfaces that worked even when people were exhausted and stressed. The first major test came during the Hartwell merger. 47 attorneys, 200,000 documents, 18 months of discovery. My system tracked every minute, every expense, every communication. When the client questioned a $3 million billing statement, we provided itemized reports down to 6-minute increments. They paid without argument. Word spread. Other law firms tried to poach me. Software companies offered to license my code. But Virginia Kelmore doubled my salary and gave me equity in the firm. You are part of the family now, she said. Then Virginia retired last year. Her son took over as managing partner, but the real power shifted to the new CTO, a Harvard Business School graduate named Trevor Walsh, who had never worked at a law firm before. He brought Silicon Valley thinking to a downtown Denver legal practice. Disruption. Innovation. moving fast and breaking things. I noticed the changes slowly. My access to certain financial reports was restricted. My direct line to the managing partner was replaced with scheduled monthly meetings. New policies required all technology decisions to be approved by the CTO's office. When I requested budget for system improvements, the response was always the same. We are evaluating our technology stack holistically. Trevor hired consultants from McKinsey to audit our systems. They spent 3 weeks interviewing people and reviewing documentation. Their report, which I was not allowed to see, apparently recommended migrating to best-in-class cloud solutions. The writing was on the wall, but I thought we had more time. I thought Trevor would at least want to understand what my system actually did before scrapping it. I was wrong. Now, cleaning out my office on Friday afternoon, I realized that 8 years of institutional knowledge was walking out the door with me. The system would keep running for a few more weeks, but when Verdant Legal took over, every custom workflow, every specialized report, every integration with the firm's other systems would disappear. They would learn soon enough what they had lost. The call came 3 weeks later while I was having coffee at a shop near my apartment. I had been using the time to update my resume and reach out to former colleagues. The consulting business was slowly taking shape, but I was in no hurry. My savings could carry me for months. Isaac, this is Jennifer from Kelmore Legal. Is this a good time? Jennifer was one of the senior paralegals. Smart woman. Always treated the support staff well. Of course. How are things? Not good. The new system. There are problems. Serious problems. I set down my coffee. What kind of problems? It lost all our billable hour tracking for the Morrison case. 3 months of work, just gone. Trevor says it is a temporary database issue. But the trial starts Monday and we need those billing records for evidence. The Morrison case. The class action that had been generating steady revenue for 2 years. The same case where my system had tracked every detail flawlessly. Have you contacted Verdant Legal Support? We have been trying for 6 hours. They say they are working on it, but they cannot give us a timeline. Trevor is, well, he is having a difficult day. I could imagine. In my system, this would have been a 5-minute fix. Full backup restoration, verification, and testing. But Verdant Legal operated differently. Their support was outsourced to India. Their backup procedures were automated and opaque. When things went wrong, customers waited in line. Is there anything specific you need from me? Actually, yes. The managing partner wants to know if you could help us. As a consultant, just temporarily, until we get this sorted out. I paused. What about Trevor? Trevor is focused on working with Verdant Legal to resolve the technical issues. This would be a separate engagement. Business continuity consulting. Business continuity consulting. A polite way of saying they needed someone to clean up the mess. My consulting rate is $300 per hour. That should be fine. When can you start? I can be there in 30 minutes. After I hung up, I sat for a moment processing what had just happened. 3 weeks ago, they fired me to save money on an obsolete system. Now they wanted to pay me 3 times my old hourly wage to fix the problems caused by their cost-saving measure. But this was just the beginning. Morrison was a relatively simple case. Wait until they tried to run month-end billing. Wait until they faced their first regulatory audit. Wait until they realized that my obsolete system had handled dozens of integrations and custom processes that Verdant Legal could not replicate. I finished my coffee and walked to my car. Trevor Walsh was about to get an expensive education in the difference between industry standard and actually working. My business cards were in the glove compartment. It was time to put them to use. When I arrived at Kelmore Legal, the office felt different. The usual afternoon energy was replaced by a tense quiet. People huddled around computer screens, typing frantically, or speaking in hushed tones on phone calls. I recognized the atmosphere from my startup days. Crisis management mode. Jennifer met me at reception. Thank God you are here. It is worse than I thought. She led me to conference room B, where my old workstation had been set up. Someone had the foresight to preserve my development environment on a separate machine before the system migration. Smart move. What is the current status? I asked. Verdant Legal says the data is not lost, just temporarily inaccessible due to a synchronization error. They estimate 4 to 6 hours for full restoration. But we do not have 4 to 6 hours. Judge Patterson wants those billing records by 5 p.m. tomorrow, or she will consider sanctions for discovery violations. I logged into my old system. Everything was exactly as I had left it 3 weeks ago. Complete billing records for Morrison, detailed time tracking, expense allocations, document correlations, all of it intact and immediately accessible. I can generate the reports Judge Patterson needs in about 10 minutes, I said. Do it. While the system compiled the data, I heard raised voices from down the hall. Through the conference room's glass walls, I could see Trevor Walsh pacing in his office, phone pressed to his ear, gesturing emphatically at someone who was not there. The Morrison billing report finished processing. 18 months of legal work, 847 attorney hours, 2,342 paralegal hours, $156,000 in documented expenses, all formatted according to court specifications. I printed 3 copies and handed them to Jennifer. This is incredible, she said, flipping through the pages. Verdant Legal told us it would take their forensics team 2 days just to identify where the data went. Different architectures, I said. My system stores everything locally with real-time cloud backup. Their system processes everything in the cloud first, then caches locally. When the cloud connection fails, everything downstream stops working. Can you fix their system? I cannot fix their system, but I can provide parallel data recovery for any case files that existed before the migration. Jennifer nodded. How much? $300 per hour, plus expenses. Done. She left to deliver the reports, and I began assessing the scope of the problem. My old system contained complete historical data for 247 active cases, 847 closed cases, and approximately 400,000 individual billing entries going back 8 years. All of it was perfectly organized and immediately accessible. Verdant Legal, meanwhile, had successfully migrated about 60% of the data before encountering what their technical support classified as unforeseen integration complexities. 20 minutes later, Trevor Walsh appeared in the doorway. He looked like he had not slept in days. Isaac, I heard you were helping with the Morrison situation. Temporary consulting engagement, I said. Business continuity support? Good. That is good. We appreciate you stepping in during this transition period. Transition period. As if this was a planned phase, rather than a complete system failure. How long until Verdant Legal has everything working normally? I asked. They are confident that full functionality will be restored within 48 hours. This is just typical migration turbulence. Growing pains. Every major firm experiences this when upgrading to enterprise-class solutions. I nodded politely. Trevor clearly believed what he was saying, which made him either naive or a remarkably good actor. In my experience, when cloud vendors said 48 hours during a crisis, the real timeline was usually measured in weeks. In the meantime, Trevor continued, perhaps you could assist with a few other data recovery tasks, just to keep things running smoothly, while Verdant Legal completes their optimization process. Of course, what do you need? Monthly billing reports for all active cases, client invoicing data for the past quarter, and... He paused, looking uncomfortable. The partnership accounting reports for the year-end audit. Partnership accounting. The most complex and sensitive data in the entire firm. The numbers that determined how profits were distributed among the founding partners. If Verdant Legal had corrupted that data, Trevor was not just facing an operational crisis. He was facing a potential mutiny from the people who actually owned the company. I can have preliminary reports ready by tomorrow morning, I said. Excellent. And Isaac? I appreciate your professionalism during this situation. I know the transition has been difficult for everyone. After he left, I opened my laptop and began documenting everything. Every request, every timeline, every promise Verdant Legal had made and broken. Trevor might think this was temporary turbulence, but I suspected we were just getting started. The partnership accounting data told the complete story. I spent 4 hours that evening reconstructing the financial reports that Verdant Legal had somehow corrupted during their migration process. What I found was worse than a simple data loss. It was systematic incompetence. Verdant Legal had migrated the easy data first: client contact information, basic case files, simple billing entries. But they had completely failed to understand the complex relationships between different data types. Partner profit distributions were calculated based on weighted formulas that considered billable hours, client origination credits, expense management, and seniority factors. My system had automated these calculations using custom algorithms developed over 8 years. Verdant Legal's system treated each data point as independent, destroying the mathematical relationships that made the calculations possible. Worse, they had apparently decided that some of my custom fields were non-standard and simply deleted them during migration. Years of carefully tracked metrics, client satisfaction scores, case complexity ratings, efficiency measurements, were gone forever. I called Jennifer at 8 p.m. "How bad is the real situation?" "Bad." Verdant Legal pushed back their timeline again. Now they are saying 5 to 7 business days for complete restoration. Trevor is in emergency meetings with the managing partner and the founding partners. There is talk of bringing in forensic data recovery specialists. What about the Morrison deadline? Your report saved us. Judge Patterson accepted them without question. But Trevor is telling everyone that Verdant Legal provided the data, not you. Interesting. Trevor was claiming credit for my work while simultaneously dealing with the crisis his decision had created. Jennifer, I need to ask you something confidential. Before the migration, did anyone from Verdant Legal actually test their system with our data? Not that I know of. They said their migration tools were proven with thousands of law firms. Did they send anyone here to understand our custom workflows? No. They said everything would be handled remotely. I had suspected as much. Verdant Legal had sold Trevor a standard package and convinced him that our unique requirements would somehow fit their generic solution. It was like ordering a custom suit through a catalog. One more question. How much is Kelmore paying Verdant Legal annually? I am not supposed to know that, but I handle the invoice processing. $800,000 per year plus implementation costs. $800,000. My old salary was $120,000 plus benefits and equity. They were paying Verdant Legal 6 times what they paid me, for a system that did not work. Isaac, can I ask you something? Could your old system handle everything we are trying to do with Verdant Legal? It was handling everything. For 8 years. Then why did Trevor replace it? That was the question I had been asking myself for weeks. Trevor was not stupid. His resume was impressive. Harvard Business School, consulting experience at top firms, successful technology implementations at previous companies, so why had he made such a catastrophic decision? The answer came to me while I was reviewing the Verdant Legal contract terms that Jennifer had quietly shared. Trevor had not just bought software, he had bought a relationship. Verdant Legal was owned by Strategian Consulting, the same firm where Trevor had worked before joining Kelmore. His former colleagues were now his vendors. It was not about technology. It was about Trevor proving that he could bring big firm solutions to a mid-sized practice. It was about demonstrating his value through expensive, visible changes rather than quiet, effective maintenance. My system worked too well. It was invisible, reliable, and boring. Trevor needed something that looked impressive in PowerPoint presentations to the partners. Unfortunately for Trevor, the partners cared more about the quarterly profit distributions that my system calculated than the impressive features that Verdant Legal promised, and those profit calculations were currently impossible to generate. Tomorrow, I would deliver the partnership accounting reports that Verdant Legal could not provide. Trevor would have to explain to the founding partners why their expensive new system could not handle the most basic function of law firm management. My consulting rate was about to become a bargain. The next morning, I arrived at Kelmore Legal with 3 sets of printed reports and a proposal that would change everything. The partnership meeting was scheduled for 10 a.m., and I wanted to be ready. Jennifer met me at the elevator. Trevor has been here since 6 a.m. Verdant Legal pushed back their timeline again. Now they are saying 2 weeks for full data recovery. The partners are furious. What about the quarterly distributions? That is why they need you. Verdant Legal says their system cannot replicate your profit allocation formulas without significant custom development. They estimate 6 months and an additional $300,000 in consulting fees. 6 months. By then, the partners would miss their quarterly distributions entirely. In a law firm, that was grounds for dissolving the management agreement and finding new leadership. Has anyone told the partners that my system can generate those reports right now? That is why I called you yesterday. The managing partner specifically requested that you attend the meeting. I had worked with the managing partner, David Kelmore, for 5 years before his mother retired. He was practical, decisive, and completely uninterested in technology for its own sake. He cared about results. At 10 a.m. sharp, I walked into the main conference room carrying my laptop and the printed reports. 8 partners sat around the mahogany table with Trevor at the far end looking like he was facing a firing squad. "Isaac," David said, standing to shake my hand. "Thank you for coming. We understand you have been helping us navigate some temporary technical difficulties. I am happy to help however I can." Trevor cleared his throat. "Isaac has been providing excellent support during our migration to Verdant Legal. The data recovery process has been more complex than anticipated, but we are confident that full functionality will be restored soon." "How soon?" asked Patricia Santos, one of the founding partners. Verdant Legal estimates 2 weeks for complete system restoration. However, they can provide basic functionality immediately, and Isaac has been generating interim reports using archived data. "Interim reports," repeated another partner. "What exactly does that mean?" I set the printed partnership reports on the table. "These are your complete profit distributions for the quarter, calculated using the same formulas that have been in place for 8 years. Every billable hour, every expense allocation, every client origination credit. The data is complete and accurate." David picked up the reports and flipped through them. "This looks identical to what we received last quarter." "Because it is identical. Same system, same calculations, same data sources." "But I thought your system was obsolete," said Patricia. Trevor shifted uncomfortably. "The strategic decision to migrate to Verdant Legal was based on long-term scalability and integration capabilities." "Trevor," David said quietly, "help me understand something. You replaced a system that worked perfectly with a system that does not work at all. And now we are paying Isaac 3 times his old salary to recreate the reports that his old system generated automatically. The migration challenges are temporary. Verdant Legal is an industry-leading solution used by major firms across the country." "Which major firms?" I asked. Trevor looked at me sharply. "Excuse me?" "You mentioned that Verdant Legal handles all the major firms in Denver. Boeing, Lockheed, federal contractors. I am curious which specific law firms use their billing system. That information is proprietary." "Actually, it is not." I opened my laptop and connected to the projector. Verdant Legal's client list is publicly available on their website. They serve 47 law firms nationwide. The largest has 32 attorneys. Kelmore Legal has 68 attorneys. You are implementing a system designed for firms less than half your size. The silence in the room was absolute. David Kelmore leaned forward. "Isaac, what would it cost to restore your original system as our primary platform?" I had been waiting for this question for 3 weeks. "I would need to evaluate the current state of the infrastructure, but I estimate 40 hours of restoration work at my consulting rate. After that, I would recommend a maintenance contract to prevent future disruptions." "And your consulting rate is?" $300 per hour. Trevor's face had gone completely pale. The vote was unanimous. 8 partners. 8 hands raised in favor of terminating the Verdant Legal contract and restoring my original system. Trevor sat motionless as David Kelmore read the resolution aloud. "Effective immediately, Isaac Flores is authorized to restore the firm's previous billing and case management system. All data migration activities with Verdant Legal are suspended pending legal review of contract termination procedures." Patricia Santos looked directly at Trevor. "We will also be conducting a comprehensive review of all technology decisions made in the past year, including vendor selection processes and due diligence procedures." Trevor finally spoke. I believe this is a mistake. Verdant Legal is a proven solution. These migration issues are temporary. Trevor, David said, Verdant Legal has cost us 6 weeks of productivity, nearly lost our Morrison case, and made it impossible to calculate partner distributions. Isaac has solved every problem in less than 24 hours using a system you declared obsolete. But the long-term scalability of a system that does not work is zero. I connected my laptop to the main server and began the restoration process. 8 years of development work, carefully preserved on backup drives, began flowing back into the firm's infrastructure. Database connections reestablished. Custom workflows reactivated. Integration points with accounting, document management, and client portals came back online. How long will this take? Asked David. 4 hours for complete restoration, another 2 hours for testing and verification. And then we will be fully operational? Better than fully operational. I have been developing improvements for 3 weeks. The restored system will be more efficient than what you had before. Trevor stood up abruptly. I need to make some calls regarding contract termination procedures. After he left, Patricia turned to me. Isaac, we owe you an apology. Letting Trevor eliminate your position was a serious error in judgment. I understand. Change is difficult to evaluate when you are not deeply familiar with the technical details. Would you consider returning as a permanent employee? I saved my work and looked around the conference room. 3 weeks ago, I had been escorted out as an obsolete relic. Now they wanted me back as their savior. I appreciate the offer, but I think the consulting arrangement works better for everyone. You get guaranteed system reliability without the overhead of a full-time position. I get the flexibility to work with multiple clients. 3 other firms have contacted me this week. Word travels fast when law firms have system failures. 6 months later, Kelmore Legal settled their breach of contract lawsuit with Verdant Legal for $200,000. Trevor Walsh resigned to pursue other opportunities, which turned out to be a lateral move to a smaller firm in Phoenix. My consulting business had grown to include 12 law firms across Colorado and Wyoming. The demand for reliable, custom-built systems was higher than I had expected. Apparently, many firms had experienced their own Verdant Legal moments with various cloud providers. I was working from my home office when David Kelmore called. Isaac, I wanted to give you an update on the partnership distributions. We just completed our best quarter in firm history. The efficiency improvements you built into the restored system have increased our billable hour tracking by 12%. That is excellent news. There is something else. We are opening a second office in Boulder. Would you be interested in building an integrated system for both locations? Absolutely. What is your timeline? We would like to start planning next month. And Isaac? This time, you will be reporting directly to me, no intermediaries. After we hung up, I walked to the window of my home office. The mountains were clearly visible today, snow-capped peaks rising above the Denver skyline. I had built something that worked, something that mattered, something that lasted. My phone buzzed with a text message from Jennifer. New CTO started today. First thing he asked was whether you were available for a consultation on system architecture. I told him your rate is $500 per hour now. He did not flinch. $500 per hour. Fair market value for expertise that could not be replaced by a catalog solution. I opened my laptop and began working on the Boulder integration specifications. Some problems required custom solutions built by people who understood the difference between working and working well. The market was finally catching up to that reality.